Dust devils danced across the cracked earth, mirroring the whirlwind in Silas's soul. He was a shadow, a ghost drifting through the remnants of a war he didn't want to understand. His clothes were patched and faded, his face etched with lines that told stories of loss and hardship. He carried only a worn rifle, a canteen that was often empty, and a heart that felt as barren as the landscape. Silas hadn't seen another soul in days, only the vultures circling overhead, a constant reminder of death's presence. The sun beat down mercilessly, turning the air thick and heavy. He pushed onward, driven by a nameless urge, a restless spirit that wouldn't let him settle. He'd become accustomed to the silence, the oppressive quiet that followed the storm of violence. He'd been a farmer once, a husband, a father. Those memories were like faded photographs, beautiful but painful to look at for too long. Now he was just Silas, a drifter, a survivor. He walked with a purpose, though he didn't know where he was going, only that he had to keep moving. He scanned the horizon constantly, wary of any sign of trouble. This land had become a graveyard, and he was just passing through, hoping to find some small measure of peace, a place to rest his weary bones. The stench of smoke and decay hung heavy in the air as Silas crested a small rise. Below him lay the skeletal remains of a wagon, its wooden frame charred and blackened, like a giant, broken ribcage. He usually avoided these places, too many ghosts lingered. But something drew him closer, an unnatural stillness that felt different from the usual aftermath of violence. He approached cautiously, rifle raised, his senses on high alert. Vultures scattered from the wagon's carcass, their beady eyes gleaming with disappointment. Silas circled the wreck, his boots crunching on the ash-covered ground. It was clear there had been a struggle. Arrows lay scattered, their fletchings torn, and the ground was stained dark. He peered inside the wagon. Most of the contents had been looted or destroyed, but a pile of blankets remained in one corner. He hesitated, a knot forming in his stomach. He had a bad feeling. With a deep breath, he reached out and pulled back the blankets. His breath caught in his throat. Lying there, amidst the destruction, was a baby. She couldn't have been more than a few months old, her tiny face smeared with dirt and soot. Miraculously, she was alive, her small chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. Her big, blue eyes blinked up at him, filled with a trust that shattered the wall around his heart. For the first time in a long time, Silas felt something other than emptiness. He knelt, his rough hands hovering over the child, unsure. Every instinct screamed at him to leave. He was no caretaker, no protector. He was a survivor, and survival meant being alone. But those eyes, they held a plea he couldn't ignore. A flicker of memory, sharp and painful, pierced through his defenses. A small, blonde-haired girl, giggling as he tossed her in the air. A warm embrace, a trusting smile. His daughter, Lily. Gone now, taken by sickness years ago. The memory was a wound he thought had healed, but seeing this baby reopened it, raw and bleeding. He remembered holding Lily's tiny hand, promising to protect her always. He had failed. He couldn't fail again. Silas looked around, assessing the situation. He couldn't leave her here to die, but taking her meant slowing down, becoming a target. It meant risking everything. He clenched his jaw, his decision made. He carefully scooped the baby into his arms, cradling her against his chest. She whimpered softly, then settled, her tiny hand gripping his calloused finger. "All right, little one," he murmured, his voice raspy from disuse. "We're getting out of here." He wrapped her in a clean piece of blanket he found tucked away in his pack. He knew this journey would be dangerous, maybe impossible. But looking down at the innocent face nestled in his arms, he knew he had no choice. He would protect her, even if it cost him his life. The wind whispered through the tall grass, carrying the scent of dust and distant rain. Silas moved slowly, his eyes constantly scanning the horizon. He knew he was entering contested territory. The signs were everywhere: broken arrows, discarded weapons, and the lingering smell of fear. He needed to find water and shelter, but he also needed to be invisible. He remembered Lily's laughter echoing through their small farmhouse. He built that house with his own 2 hands, dreaming of a future filled with warmth and family. He saw her face, so clear, so vibrant, as he held her tiny hand. Flashback. "Daddy, tell me a story." Lily would plead, her eyes wide with anticipation. He would tell her tales of brave knights and magical creatures, always ending with the promise that he would always protect her. But promises were fragile things. He saw her lying in bed, her small body racked with fever. He remembered the doctor shaking his head, the helplessness that washed over him. He remembered holding her as she took her last breath, the world fading to gray. In flashback, Silas blinked, the memory fading. He had buried Lily under the old oak tree in their yard. He had left that place, unable to bear the constant reminder of his loss. He became a ghost, wandering aimlessly, until he found this baby. Maybe, just maybe, he could redeem himself. Maybe he could finally keep a promise. He adjusted the baby in his arms, his resolve hardening. He would not fail her. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and red. Silas found a shallow cave hidden behind a thicket of thorny bushes. It wasn't much, but it offered some protection from the elements and prying eyes. He laid the baby down on a bed of soft leaves and checked her. She was sleeping soundly, her tiny face peaceful. He rationed the last of his water, carefully wetting a cloth and dabbing it on her lips. He had to find more water soon, and food. He hadn't seen any game in days. He ate a small piece of dried meat, his stomach growling in protest. Suddenly, a twig snapped nearby. Silas froze, his hand instinctively reaching for his rifle. He peered into the darkness, his senses on high alert. He heard the rustling of leaves, the soft thud of footsteps. They were close. He quickly scooped up the baby, holding her close to his chest, muffling any sound she might make. He moved silently to the back of the cave, pressing himself against the cool stone wall. For figures emerged from the shadows, their faces painted with tribal markings. They were warriors, armed with spears and bows. They moved with a predatory grace, their eyes scanning the area. Silas knew he was outnumbered, outgunned. He had to be smart. He couldn't risk a direct confrontation, not with the baby in his arms. He held his breath, praying they wouldn't find him. They moved on, their shadows disappearing into the night. Silas let out a shaky breath, his heart pounding in his chest. That was too close. The journey had just begun, and it was already proving to be more dangerous than he imagined. The next morning, Silas felt a pang of guilt. The baby hadn't made a sound all night, but he knew she must be hungry. He managed to find a few berries, crushing them into a pulp and carefully feeding her. She seemed to like it, gurgling and reaching for more. He smiled, a genuine smile that hadn't touched his face in years. He needed to give her a name, something hopeful. "Hope," he murmured, testing the sound of it. "That's what I'll call you." As they walked, Silas kept his eyes peeled for anything that could help Hope. He found a small, discarded leather pouch, which he cleaned and filled with soft moss for her to lie on. He even started talking to her, telling her stories of the places he'd seen, the people he'd met, though he knew she couldn't understand. It felt good to talk, to break the silence that had been his constant companion. Later that day, while searching through the debris of another abandoned campsite, he spotted something small and colorful nestled in the dirt. It was a wooden toy, a crudely carved bird with one wing broken off. It was worn and faded, but Silas recognized it for what it was, a child's treasure. He cleaned it off and offered it to Hope. Her eyes lit up. She reached for it, her tiny fingers grasping the bird tightly. She gurgled with delight, waving it around. The broken toy became her constant companion, a symbol of hope in a world filled with destruction. Silas watched her, a warmth spreading through his chest. He was starting to care, really care, and that scared him more than any warring tribe. 3 days passed, each one more harrowing than the last. Silas and Hope were constantly on the move, avoiding settlements and sticking to the shadows. He was running low on supplies, and Hope needed more than berries and crushed meat. He had to take a risk. He spotted a small, abandoned trading post nestled in a gully. It was risky, but he needed to find supplies. He left Hope hidden in a thicket of bushes, promising to return quickly. He approached the post cautiously, his rifle ready. Suddenly, he heard a shout. He whirled around to see 3 warriors charging towards him, their faces contorted with rage. They were from the same tribe he had encountered before. They had spotted him. Silas knew he couldn't run. He had to fight. He dropped his pack and raised his rifle, firing a shot that dropped one of the warriors. The other 2 kept coming, their spears glinting in the sunlight. He fought with a ferocity born of desperation. He dodged a spear, slamming the butt of his rifle into the face of another warrior. He was fast, but they were relentless. He knew he couldn't hold them off for long. Then he heard it. A baby's cry. Hope. They had found her. Rage surged through Silas. He roared, tackling the remaining warrior to the ground. He wrestled for the spear, finally managing to wrench it free. He stood over the warrior, his face a mask of fury. He could kill him, end it now. But then he saw Hope, her eyes wide with fear. He lowered the spear, sparing the warrior's life. He knew killing wouldn't solve anything. He grabbed his pack and ran towards Hope, scooping her up in his arms. "We have to go," he said, his voice hoarse. He knew they were being hunted now, but he wouldn't let them take Hope. He wouldn't let them hurt her. He was her protector now, and he would fight to the death to keep her safe. They ran for hours, Silas's lungs burning, his muscles screaming in protest. He finally found a small stream, where he collapsed, gasping for air. He knew they couldn't stay here long, but they needed to rest. He looked at Hope, her face pale and drawn. He felt a wave of guilt. He had put her in danger. Flashback. A grand hall, filled with light and laughter. A beautiful woman, with kind eyes and a gentle smile, holding a baby. She was dressed in fine robes, adorned with intricate beadwork. She spoke to the baby in a soft, melodic voice, a language Silas didn't understand. The hall was filled with people, all smiling and celebrating. They were a peaceful tribe, known for their wisdom and their connection to the land. They were the keepers of the balance. But darkness was coming. Whispers of war, of greed, of a ruthless tribe seeking to conquer all the land. The woman knew her people were in danger. She held the baby close, her eyes filled with a mixture of love and fear. She knew the baby was special, that she held the key to uniting the tribes and bringing peace to the land. She had to protect her, no matter the cost. In flashback, Silas shook his head, trying to clear his mind. He didn't understand what he had just seen, but he knew it was important. He looked at Hope, sleeping peacefully in his arms. She was more than just a baby. She was something special, something worth fighting for. He had to get her to safety, not just for her sake, but for the sake of the entire West. Days turned into weeks. Silas and Hope traveled through treacherous terrain, always on the lookout for danger. Silas learned to hunt small game, finding enough food to keep them both alive. He even managed to fashion a makeshift carrier for Hope, making their journey a little easier. One evening, as the sun began to set, they stumbled upon a small, hidden clearing. In the center stood a dilapidated hut, smoke curling from its chimney. Silas approached cautiously, his rifle raised. He knocked on the door. A moment later, the door creaked open, revealing an old woman with wrinkled skin and piercing blue eyes. She wore simple clothes, but her gaze was sharp and knowing. She looked at Silas, then at Hope. A smile spread across her face. "Welcome, Silas," she said, her voice raspy but kind. "I've been expecting you." Silas was taken aback. How did she know his name? "You carry a heavy burden," the old woman continued, gesturing towards Hope. "But you're on the right path." She beckoned them inside. The hut was small and cluttered, but it felt warm and inviting. The old woman offered them food and water, which they gratefully accepted. "Her name is Hope," Silas said, finally breaking the silence. The old woman nodded. "She is more than just Hope, Silas. She is the key. She is the last of the keepers. She is the one who can unite the tribes and bring peace to this land." Silas stared at her in disbelief. "What do you mean?" The old woman explained that Hope was descended from a long line of leaders, chosen to maintain balance in the West. Her parents were murdered by the warring tribe, who sought to destroy the keepers and seize control. She is the only one who can stop them, the old woman said. But she needs your help. Silas looked at Hope, sleeping peacefully in his arms. He knew he couldn't turn back now. He had a purpose. He had to protect her, not just for her sake, but for the sake of the entire West. Silas spent a restless night, tossing and turning. The old woman's words echoed in his mind. Hope, the key to uniting the tribes. It was too much. He was just a drifter, a survivor. He wasn't a hero. He just wanted to protect Hope, to keep her safe from the dangers of the world. But now he knew that protecting her meant more than just keeping her alive. It meant fulfilling her destiny. He looked at Hope, sleeping peacefully beside him. She was so small, so innocent. How could she possibly unite the tribes? How could she bring peace to this war-torn land? He felt a surge of doubt. Maybe the old woman was wrong. Maybe it was all just a fairy tale. But then he remembered the flashback, the grand hall, the beautiful woman holding the baby. He remembered the warmth, the peace. He knew it was real. He knew Hope was special. He rose before dawn, his mind made up. He had to get her to safety. He had to get her to the hidden valley where the remaining members of her tribe were waiting. He didn't know how he would do it, but he would find a way. He woke the old woman, thanking her for her kindness. I have to go, he said. I have to get Hope to her people. The old woman nodded. The path will be difficult, Silas, but you are strong. You are brave, and you're not alone. The spirits of the keepers will guide you. Silas gathered his belongings, his heart filled with a mixture of fear and determination. He looked at Hope, her eyes wide with trust. He knew he couldn't let her down. He had to protect her, no matter the cost. He picked her up in his arms, whispering, "We're going home, little one. We're going home." He stepped out of the hut, into the rising sun, ready to face whatever dangers lay ahead. They traveled for days, the hidden valley growing closer with each step. Silas could feel it, a sense of hope in the air, a promise of peace. But he also knew they were being followed. He had seen the signs: broken branches, disturbed earth, the lingering scent of smoke. The warring tribe was closing in. He reached a narrow canyon, the only path to the hidden valley. It was the perfect place for an ambush. He knew they were waiting. He took a deep breath, preparing himself for the fight. He placed Hope gently on the ground, hiding her behind a large boulder. "Stay here, little one," he whispered. "I'll be right back." He moved forward, his rifle raised, his senses on high alert. Suddenly, arrows rained down from the canyon walls. He dove for cover, narrowly avoiding being hit. The warriors emerged from their hiding places, their faces painted with war paint, their eyes filled with hatred. They were led by a massive warrior, his face scarred and cruel. He was the leader of the warring tribe, the one who had ordered the destruction of Hope's people. "Give us the child, Drifter," the warrior roared, "and we will let you live." Silas stood his ground, his face grim. "I will never let you have her," he said. "She is the only hope for this land." The warrior laughed, a harsh, guttural sound. "Then you will die with her." He charged, his war club raised high above his head. The battle began. It was a desperate fight, a clash between good and evil. Silas fought with the strength of a cornered animal, protecting Hope with every fiber of his being. He dodged blows, fired his rifle, and fought hand to hand. He was outnumbered, but he wouldn't give up. He wouldn't let them win, not while Hope was still alive. The battle raged on, the canyon echoing with the sounds of clashing steel and desperate cries. Silas was wounded, blood streaming down his face, but he refused to yield. He had to protect Hope. He had to keep her safe. He saw an opening and lunged forward, disarming the ruthless warrior. They grappled, their bodies slamming against the canyon walls. The warrior was strong, but Silas was driven by a force he couldn't comprehend. He remembered Lily. He remembered Hope. He remembered the promise he had made. With a final surge of strength, Silas managed to knock the warrior to the ground, his war club flying out of reach. He stood over him, his rifle pointed at his head. He could end it now, in the war, in the suffering. But then he saw something in the warrior's eyes: fear. He saw the same fear he had seen in Hope's eyes at the trading post. He lowered his rifle. "It doesn't have to be this way," Silas said, his voice hoarse. "There is another way. There is hope." The warrior looked at him in disbelief. He had expected death, not mercy. Silas turned and walked away, leaving the warrior lying on the ground. He retrieved Hope from behind the boulder, cradling her in his arms. "It's over, little one," he whispered. "It's finally over." He knew the war wasn't truly over, but he had shown them that there was another way, a path of peace. He had shown them mercy. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to change things. He knew he had to get Hope to the hidden valley. He had to fulfill her destiny. The future of the West depended on it. With weary steps, Silas and Hope emerged from the canyon, the landscape opening into a breathtaking valley. Lush greenery stretched as far as the eye could see, a stark contrast to the desolate world they had left behind. A crystal-clear river flowed through the heart of the valley, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of wildflowers. It was a paradise, a sanctuary. As they approached, figures emerged from the trees, their faces filled with hope and anticipation. They were the remaining members of Hope's tribe, the keepers of the balance. They had been waiting for her, praying for her safe return. A woman stepped forward, her eyes filled with tears. She recognized Hope immediately. She reached out, her hands trembling. Silas hesitated. He had grown so attached to Hope. She had become his reason for living. But he knew he couldn't keep her. She belonged with her people. He knelt down, gently placing Hope in the woman's arms. "Take care of her," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "She is the key to our future." The woman nodded, her eyes filled with gratitude. "We will, Silas. We will protect her with our lives." She looked at Hope, her face radiant with love. "Welcome home, little one," she whispered. "Welcome home." The tribe members gathered around Hope, their faces filled with joy. They had finally found their hope. Silas watched them, a lump forming in his throat. He knew he had done the right thing, but it didn't make it any easier. He had to say goodbye. He turned and walked away, leaving Hope in the arms of her people. He was alone again, but he was no longer the same man. He had found his purpose, and he had fulfilled it. He had brought Hope home. Silas paused at the edge of the valley, watching as the tribe members celebrated Hope's arrival. He saw the woman holding her close, singing a lullaby in a language he didn't understand. He saw the other children gathered around, their faces filled with curiosity and wonder. He saw hope in their eyes. He knew he had done the right thing. He had protected Hope, he had brought her home, and he had given her a chance to fulfill her destiny. He had found redemption for his past failures. He was no longer just a drifter, a survivor. He was a hero. He turned and walked away, his heart filled with a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. He mounted his horse, the animal sensing the change in its master. He rode out of the valley, back into the desolate landscape. But this time, it didn't feel so desolate. It felt like a new beginning. He had a purpose now. He had to spread the word, to tell others about hope, to tell them about the possibility of peace. He had to help unite the tribes, to help them find a better way. He rode towards a setting sun, a changed man. He was still a drifter, but he was a drifter with a mission. He was a drifter with hope. He was a drifter who had found his way. He was Silas, the protector of hope, the hero of the West. And his journey had just begun. He smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. He was finally free.